He's been called the architect of power in Washington, a man who knows how to make laws, break deadlocks, and influence the course of a nation. Chuck Schumer has spent decades at the very core of American politics, rising from the gritty boroughs of Brooklyn to one of the most commanding roles in the federal government. But what happens when the Senate Majority Leader steps away from the microphone? Who is Chuck Schumer when the cameras stop rolling and the political theater fades to silence? His rise is no mystery. It's been played out in headlines, speeches, and policy wins. Yet, behind the crafted soundbites and public persona lies a far more intriguing story, one of quiet accumulation, private alliances, and a life built not just on public service, but strategic power. From private dinners with presidents to million-dollar property holdings, Chuck Schumer's lifestyle is as carefully engineered as his political legacy. It's a world very few have seen, one that blends power with privacy and legacy with luxury. Buckle up as we step into the hidden world of Chuck Schumer in 2025. The road to power wasn't paved in gold. It was carved through decades of grit, calculation, and unrelenting ambition. Chuck Schumer didn't just enter politics, he conquered it. Born and raised in the blue-collar neighborhoods of Brooklyn, he learned early that survival required more than just intellect. It required instinct. That street-smart resilience stayed with him as he graduated from Harvard Law and dove headfirst into the political machine. At just 29, he claimed a seat in the New York State Assembly, launching a career that would span over 4 decades. But what separated Schumer from the rest wasn't just his work ethic, it was his mastery of political momentum. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He was the one pulling the strings behind the curtain. Each year, each vote, and each strategic alliance was a step toward absolute influence. And by the time he stepped into the Senate in 1999, he wasn't just representing New York, he was shaping the future of the Democratic Party. As his political power surged, so did his social standing. The scrappy kid from Brooklyn who once rode the subway to college was now rubbing shoulders with presidents, CEOs, and world leaders. Schumer's long-term career didn't just place him at the helm of policy. It cemented his status among America's elite. And with that status came access to private networks, invitation-only fundraisers, and high-stakes donor events. These weren't just political tools, they were social stepping stones. The longer he held power, the more insulated his life became. His influence began to transcend policy. Schumer had become a brand, a gatekeeper of political privilege, one whose name alone could open doors across Washington and beyond. What began as a mission to serve quickly evolved into a lifetime of strategic positioning. And that strategy wasn't limited to the Senate floor. Quietly and deliberately, Schumer built a financial portfolio that mirrored his growing influence. Before his ascent, his net worth hovered modestly, but over time, as power grew, so did his fortune. Book deals, some public, others negotiated behind closed doors, brought in high 6-figure advances. His memoirs and political commentaries became top sellers not necessarily because of the prose, but because they offered access to the thoughts of a man entrenched in the core of Washington's power structure. Add to that speaking fees, personal investments, and retirement benefits carefully structured over decades of public service, and suddenly, Schumer wasn't just wealthy in influence, he was financially secure in a way most Americans could never comprehend. While he never flaunted it, the numbers didn't lie. In 2025, his estimated net worth paints the picture of a man who played the long game and won. But financial security is only one layer of his power. As Senate Majority Leader, Schumer gained access to privileges the average person could barely imagine. Exclusive transportation, priority security detail, access to classified briefings, and round-the-clock staff support. His calendar wasn't just filled with meetings, it was orchestrated with global consequences. Foreign diplomats, tech magnates, and intelligence heads all became part of his daily sphere. Every handshake came with weight. Every closed-door meeting, a ripple across the political landscape. But beneath that polished routine lay an even more fascinating layer, one the public rarely sees. The private calls, the informal gatherings at elite social clubs, the whispered agreements over dinners in secured locations. These weren't random perks. They were calculated advantages, positioned to protect, expand, and secure not just his power, but his legacy. Behind the curtain, Schumer operated like a tactician. He understood that influence without insulation was a liability, and so he mastered the art of quiet accumulation. Investments flowed into trusts. Real estate was purchased through LLCs. Book earnings were routed into low-risk portfolios. All under the radar, all perfectly legal. Schumer's life was not one of flashy excess, it was one of intelligent control. A masterclass in long-term planning. And while his enemies threw accusations, and media scrutiny sharpened its blade, very little ever stuck. Because for every exposed thread, there were 10 more hidden in shadows carefully guarded, meticulously structured, and shielded by decades of experience. This wasn't luck. This was the lifestyle of a man who understood power not just as something you wield, but as something you protect. But while politics made him powerful, it's his private life that truly defines his legacy. Beyond the podium, behind the policies, and away from public scrutiny, lies the next chapter in Chuck Schumer's life. One that's less about laws and more about love, legacy, and the family he's built behind fortress walls. She's not a name that floods the headlines. She doesn't chase cameras, court controversy, or indulge in the theatrics of public life. But Iris Weinshall is no ordinary political spouse. Behind Chuck Schumer, the fierce negotiator, the Senate powerhouse, stands a woman whose quiet brilliance has shaped not just a household, but a legacy of public service that spans decades. Long before she was known as the wife of one of America's most powerful politicians, Iris had already etched her name into New York City's complex infrastructure. As the city's transportation commissioner, she managed one of the most complicated transit systems on the planet, bringing order where there was chaos and strategy where there had once been stagnation. Later, as a university executive, she didn't slow down, she expanded her reach, overseeing policies that impacted tens of thousands of students. Iris Weinshall didn't just share the stage with Chuck, she built her own. Their love story didn't unfold under the spotlight. It began in the classrooms and conference halls of New York, a shared passion for public service drawing them together. In a world obsessed with political drama and personal scandal, their bond has remained remarkably untarnished. Their marriage is not a showpiece, it's a foundation. For over 4 decades, through countless political storms, campaigns, and controversies, Iris and Chuck have remained each other's constant. While the world watched Chuck climb the political mountain, few realized that Iris was not just supporting him, she was walking right beside him. Their relationship wasn't built on fame or ambition alone. It was forged in the understanding that power means nothing if it comes at the cost of partnership. In the ruthless glare of Washington's spotlight, very few relationships survive. With the pressure, the scrutiny, and the relentless demands of public life, most couples crumble under the weight. But not Iris and Chuck. They built barriers, not to shut the world out, but to protect what mattered. They didn't post curated moments or attend every gala together. Instead, they created boundaries, a sacred space where politics couldn't intrude. Even as Chuck rose to become Senate Majority Leader, Iris stayed out of the political theater, not because she was absent, but because she understood that real influence doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply holds steady when everything else begins to fall apart. What truly binds them isn't just love, it's shared values, mutual respect, sacrifice. They both understood early on that their work wouldn't just define their careers, it would shape their family. And so, when it came time to raise their daughters, Jessica and Allison, Iris took the lead in shielding them from the crushing weight of public expectation. Unlike many political families whose children become headlines, the Schumer girls were raised with intention. Privacy wasn't just a policy, it was a principle. The girls grew up grounded, shielded not by privilege, but by wisdom. And in that choice, Iris demonstrated once again that her strength wasn't loud, it was quiet, deliberate, and enduring. And with such a powerful partnership, it's no surprise their home reflects their values: luxury, tradition, and discretion. Tucked quietly into the historic heart of Brooklyn lies a brownstone that tells a different kind of story, one not of politics or policy, but of permanence. Chuck Schumer and Iris Weinschall's Park Slope residence isn't just a home, it's a symbol. This four-story townhouse, nestled among century-old facades, is a reminder of Schumer's roots, of where his journey began before Washington consumed his every day. But this isn't the same home it once was. Over the years, subtle yet strategic, renovations transformed it from a traditional space into a refined urban fortress equipped with updated security, modern interiors, and hidden comforts. It's not loud, not flashy, and certainly not meant to impress strangers. It's designed to hold secrets. And with a current estimated value of well over $2 million, it stands as a quiet declaration of wealth, one acquired not in the markets, but in the margins of power. But even the most polished urban sanctuary has its limits. When the noise of Capitol Hill becomes too loud, when the spotlight burns too hot, the Schumers retreat north to a secluded haven nestled in upstate New York. This estate, far from the chaos of legislative chambers and press briefings, offers what few in their world ever truly get: silence. Here, the schedule disappears. The phones are quiet. The strategist becomes a husband, and the commissioner becomes a wife. For years, this escape has remained largely off the radar, protected by distance and discretion. But make no mistake, it's a key piece of the puzzle. A place where plans are quietly crafted, alliances reinforced, and legacies reflected upon in peace. The estate isn't enormous by celebrity standards, but its value lies in its function: control, privacy, and escape. Still, duty calls. And for much of the year, Schumer resides in Washington, D.C., operating at the nucleus of American power. But unlike some of his contemporaries who rent high-rise luxury or purchase sprawling suburban compounds, Schumer's D.C. accommodations reflect his calculated balance of practical, discreet, and highly secure. He isn't one to flaunt. His choices are rooted in access, not opulence. His home in D.C. allows for quick commutes to the Capitol, confidential gatherings, and high-level negotiations, all without stepping into the media's glare. Compared to the gilded mansions of some politicians, Schumer's properties seem almost reserved. But that restraint is deceptive, because what he lacks in spectacle, he more than makes up for in strategy. When placed beside the sprawling real estate portfolios of other political heavyweights, those who flaunt oceanfront homes or mountaintop retreats, Schumer's holdings might appear understated. But therein lies his brilliance. His estate isn't designed to impress the masses, it's meant to function, to protect, and above all, to remain unseen. His combined real estate portfolio, spread across New York and D.C., now surpasses an estimated $4 million, and yet, very little is ever publicly showcased. He doesn't broadcast his holdings because, in Schumer's world, the true currency isn't luxury, it's leverage. But Schumer's taste for comfort doesn't stop at the front door. It rolls on four wheels. Two. In a world where power often arrives in the form of roaring engines and exotic machines, Chuck Schumer's approach to transportation is refreshingly and strategically understated. While many in his circle flaunt Italian supercars or seven-figure garages, Schumer chooses something far more calculated: functionality over flash. He's not interested in turning heads at intersections or revving egos on Capitol Hill. Instead, his philosophy is rooted in a deeper kind of power, the kind that doesn't need validation. For Schumer, every decision reflects purpose, even the ones made behind the wheel. He doesn't drive to be seen. He drives to get things done. And that mindset says more about the man than any sports car ever could. For years, his loyalty has remained firmly with American-made sedans. There's a reason for that, and it's not just patriotism. These cars are reliable and durable and speak to a certain class consciousness that Schumer never abandoned, even as his status skyrocketed. They're the kind of vehicles that reflect where he came from, not where he's ended up. Crown Victorias, Buick Regals, Chevy Impalas. Clean, quiet, and utterly unpretentious. They're built with substance, not spectacle. And Schumer appreciates that. In a political landscape filled with noise and bravado, his car choices reflect something rare: restraint. Not because he can't afford more, but because he knows the message behind every choice matters. Still, with power comes the need for protection. And for that, Schumer turns to something more fortified. His primary vehicle in D.C. isn't a muscle car or sleek European import, it's an armored SUV, specifically outfitted for both security and comfort. Discreet on the outside, reinforced within, it offers just enough style to pass as an executive transport. But underneath, it's a fortress on wheels. Bullet-resistant glass, reinforced doors, and communication systems are embedded for emergencies because, for a man carrying the weight of the Senate, the risk is never theoretical. It's real. The SUV isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And, once again, Schumer shows that his decisions are never about indulgence. They're about control, but tucked away in a private garage, far from the public eye, lies one exception. A vintage 1969 Dodge Dart, restored, polished, and revered. It's not a collector's centerpiece or a showroom queen. It's a symbol. The car belonged to a relative, passed down, rebuilt piece by piece. It doesn't scream wealth, it whispers memory. And that's what makes it so powerful. This one vehicle, modest in its value but priceless in its sentiment, offers a rare glimpse into the man before the politics. The boy from Brooklyn who once dreamed big without knowing how far he'd go. The Dart isn't about the road, it's about the roots. Ultimately, Schumer's driving habits are not designed for headlines, they're designed for longevity. Quiet engines, unmarked routes, vehicles that offer more utility than bragging rights. He doesn't chase trends or chase speed. He drives to move forward, without drawing attention, without creating spectacle. Low-key luxury. Purposeful choices. Every vehicle has a function, and every function has a reason. Because in Schumer's world, excess is weakness but strategy, that's power. Even his transportation reflects a strategy, one that mirrors how he builds and preserves his fortune. Power isn't just held in policy, it's stored in portfolios. And Chuck Schumer, the master strategist of the Senate floor, has applied that same quiet precision to his finances. In 2025, his net worth has crossed the $3 million mark. a figure that might pale next to tech billionaires or Hollywood royalty. But within political circles, it speaks volumes. Because Schumer didn't build his fortune on fame, he built it on foresight. Every investment, every income stream, every asset in his name tells the story of a man who understands the value of long-term positioning. This isn't the tale of overnight riches. It's a narrative of careful accumulation, crafted behind the scenes with the same discipline he brings to politics. And the real brilliance? Most people have no idea how much power he's amassed financially or otherwise.